inspired by a true story that I heard about from a friend who's in the Korean Christian community here in Southern California. And this particular incident was like a college group, and it was a different country that they had gone to. And so it was a bit of a, I really kind of wasn't interested in writing about that particular event and the specificity of what happened to those people. So I kind of intentionally, like I looked it up, but there was actually very little reported on that. And I think also I found it to be just a very compelling way in, the idea of it, to write about the male gaze, coming of age as a girl in a patriarchy, power dynamics that affect survivors reporting abuse. And then also, I got this idea to engage with this, with our culture of revenge fantasy, and, like exploring the way that we as a culture use genre to kind of fantasize about justice and revenge, and I think it's very interesting that most of those fantasies in those genres are overwhelmingly male driven. And yet, that's the model that I think we have access to when we're young, in terms of what we should do if something like this were to happen. You have to think a lot about how the story is going to be told. It's going to be on a stage. What kind of theater are you aiming for? What kind of things do you have to, how long, when you do these fantasies that require these technical aspects, like how quick can people change their clothes? And I shaved it down to the very bone in this one. But there's a way to do it. So, like there's that's one of the things that I really love about working in all of these different media, is like, you think about what are these practical constraints, and how far can you push it but still make it possible to do it. And yeah, like in TV writing, you just have a different palette of paints to work with, and same with film. I'd say in some ways, people say that television and theater are closer than television and film, because there's a lot more dialogue usually in television. So it tends to be a medium that has longer scenes than in film, and like more talking than in film. There's a lot more visual storytelling in film generally. You can always find exceptions, but I'd say that's a pretty good general rule. And then in theater, like this play is basically one long scene with like some intercuts, but you could not really do a television episode that's like this. It's harder to do that. So you kind of like learn the different rules of each medium, and then the fun comes with like when you start breaking those rules and when you start pushing things. And I think those tend to be those, episodes of television or movies or plays that people really talk about, is when you really break the rules, but you have to kind of know what those rules are. I mean, I think the tone of Severance is similar in a lot of ways to it just tends to be the tone that I tend to work in. So probably not a coincidence, but yeah, I think that that I'm interested in dramas that are also really funny. I think that balance of light and dark, and that absurd sense of humor, that I just think you look around our world and it is completely absurd, and you have to kind of laugh even as you're crying all the time. There's something so I think that's kind of the tone of what Severance is doing. And then it also is very true of Man of God as well, that I know it's described as a comedy, because I think that's the only way to sort of get across that it is such a comedic piece, and that there's so many laughs along the way, but it's at its core, it's a drama. And I think that's true of Severance. That's true of a lot of the stuff that I write and that I like to watch as well. I think, I wrote this play, or the first draft of it at least. I think several, I think I wrote the whole play before Harvey Weinstein bombshell stuff and pre-Me Too movement becoming a big conversation point. So I think in some ways, you know, some of the fury of the play came out of a sense of like, literally no one's talking about this. And then like, since I wrote the play, people started really talking about it. And that, you know, I think that's great. That's what I had hoped for. And yet at the same time, I think that there was a sense of like, oh, okay, now we fixed that. But I don't know. I keep thinking that maybe things are different now, but then I've had so many teenage girls who see the play come and tell me or contact me to tell me that I got it exactly right. And this is what they feel. And they feel helpless and like they're alone all the time. And so unfortunately, I think we have a really long way to go still on these issues of power dynamics and the way it intersects with gender and age. You know, I think it's unfortunately just one of those ancient problems that we're still wrestling with how to address. And so I don't know. I don't really think of it all that differently than when I wrote it. I don't think that this is something that's easily solved. So I don't know. I hope that the play can stay relevant in, you know, in that sense. And I also hope that the play stops being relevant completely and that we don't have to deal with this when we're teenagers anymore.